Hello, and welcome to English 314 Writing and Technology. I'm Dr. Tirrell, and I'll be your instructor this semester. The purpose of this video is to give you an introduction to the course website, which contains information about course policies, assignments, and due dates. This is a hybrid section of 314, which means that ordinarily we'll have one course meeting per week in our classroom. For us, that'll occur on Thursdays from 3:30 to 4:45 in Bear Hall, room 202. We'll also have one course meeting that takes place online, and that'll encompass tasks you'll accomplish or synchronous or asynchronous interactions. So because of this, the course website is absolutely critical. So after watching this video, make sure that you familiarize yourself with it thoroughly. The URL for it appears here on this slide right at the bottom. It's also in the information below on this YouTube page. You also should have received an email from me with the link. However you get there, you just need to make sure that you go ahead and go to that website and make sure you're familiar with all its parts. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. This is the website. This is what you should see when you go to the link. And you can see there are a few sort of consistent site features on all pages. We've got this navigational structure up here with the tabs. Home, syllabus, assignments, and calendar. There'll be a couple more tabs probably as time goes on, but that's what we've got right now. And those will appear on all of the pages. There's also this sidebar over here with course information, where it meets and when it meets, and then instructor information. That's how to get a hold of me, and it also has my office and my office hours. You can always contact me by email as well if you have any questions or if you need to schedule an appointment or anything like that. This homepage, the first page, this collects any news updates, anything you should know. I'll go ahead and post to this homepage. Right now, there's just this welcome message that gives you some information about the course and directs you to the other course pages here in the links. The next tab over, the syllabus. Now, this is something that probably you'll only look at this, a few times, but it is important because it contains all of the course policies, and you're all obliged to abide by the policies, and in fact you're going to be filling out a contract that indicates that you've read this stuff and that you're familiar with it. We're just going to kind of hit the high points on this video, but do make sure that you read the syllabus as soon as you go to the course webpage, just to make sure you're comfortable with all the policies. A lot of the questions that students have, they tend to be answered in the syllabus. That doesn't mean you can't ask me for clarification, of course. But if you do have sort of a question about structure or those kinds of things, check the syllabus first, because as I say, a lot of those questions are answered inside of it. As I mentioned, you're going to be signing a course contract that basically just says you understand and are abiding by these policies. It's linked here in the description. It's also on the calendar as well, as we'll look at in a few minutes. This description section just sort of gives you the course overview. It's the thing that's in the catalog. It explains that this is a hybrid section, which does mean that we're only meeting in class once a week. We do have 2 meetings, but one of them is online. Sometimes you'll be doing tasks. Other times you'll have synchronous chat or something like that. But do be aware of that. Hybrid sections also, just because of their nature, they're a little bit different. So they require a little more of students to be independent, right? You have to be more invested in your own management and success, because you're only going to see me once a week at most. That course contract that I mentioned, it's right here. You can just check this out on your own. It basically just says that you understand the policies governing the course. And then there are 2 policies down here that by default you're opted into, but you can opt out just by initialing here. The policies are, by default, students get access to their grades through our website, and I use an anonymous ID number for each student to do that. It's not based on your student ID or anything like that. It's just a random number generator that I use. If you don't want to get your grades that way, you can opt out of that policy, and then we'll just have to figure out another way for you to get your grades. The other thing you can opt out of, by default, I can use your work anonymously for teaching or research purposes. What that means is sometimes I use previous student examples in current semesters just to kind of show what people have done. Also, I sometimes use student work anonymously for research, and that's generally in the aggregate, right? It doesn't look at an individual very often, occasionally to make a particular sort of point, but generally it's aggregated, right? This percentage of the class did this, whereas this percentage did that. If you want to opt out of that, you can initial here. You're going to have to print this and turn it into me. And as I say, it's mostly just about abiding by the policies, but you can opt out of those two things. So let's see what this course is about. As it says in the description, it's both the theory and practice of digital composition. This is, largely a kind of practical subject. We're going to be doing stuff and making stuff, but it's not just rote mechanics of, here's how to use this software tool. I mean, you could learn that in a 2-hour workshop. There's no reason to come to a university to learn that stuff. What you get here is the theory and rhetorical underpinnings of what's going to be effective, what underpins the use of this, what are the effects, what are the ethics and social implications of these things, right? It's not just a tool, right? Even seemingly straightforward things like a hammer has all kinds of implications embedded in it, how it's used. You could use a hammer to build a house or to attack somebody. So we look at the theory, the rhetoric, and the practice of these things, and they're all knitted together. That's articulated here in the course outcomes. The required materials, we do not have a course textbook for you to purchase. You don't have to buy a book. I'll be providing texts, both written things online, but also podcasts and videos and those kinds of things. You will need a couple of things. We'll need some open source design software like Audacity and probably Composer. Because those are open source, they're also free. You can just download those when we need them. And we'll be covering how to use them in class. I'm not just, telling you to go do this and then leaving you to your own devices. We're going to be covering all of this stuff as we go along. We'll have workshops and drafts and those kinds of things. You'll also need a Google account. Sorry, let me point. There we go. A Google account. You probably already have one of these. If you have Gmail or YouTube or anything like that, you already have a Google account. You're already in their system. We're going to be using some Google services, so it's just best if we go ahead and all have an account right at the beginning of the course. And we'll be actually doing that in class. So you probably already have one. If you don't, I'm going to be asking you to get one, and it's a pretty simple process. Some of the other policies here. This technology expectations, as I say, I'm not going to pour over these. I do want you to read them. I'm just going to give you sort of the gist of it. The gist of technology expectations is this is a tech-invested class. We are in a computer classroom. The main thing to take away is that you always want to back up your work, okay? You guys have grown up with computers. Whether or not you've always had one, just the society at large has always been computer-focused since you guys have been alive. So things like, well, my computer blitzed or I lost my hard drive, that's not an excuse. That's like the dog ate my homework. It just doesn't fly. You've been around them your whole lives, back up your work. You all have access to a shared drive. I think yours is called Timmy. You may or may not know this, but just by being a student here, every time you log in, you have a shared drive. If you go ahead and save your work there, it'll be accessible, anywhere you log in, even off campus. So that's a good policy. You could back it up on a flash drive, a little USB, whatever, your sort of practice is, that's fine. The takeaway here is just that, saying I lost it because my computer blitzed is just not an excuse. The other thing is we're going to be filling out a lot of forms when we do sort of small engagement assignments. I do want you to go ahead and compose those in a separate tool such as, a word processor, and then save that stuff and then copy and paste it in. I'm going to show you what that looks like here in just a second. But I do want you to make sure you have copies of everything you turn in because we're going to be using them in class. And if there's an issue with the submission, Like, you click submit and the screen just turns white and you don't know if anything got submitted or whatever, and then you go back and it's all gone. If you've written that in something else, you can just copy and paste it over again. It's no big deal. If you've written that directly into the online form and it has a problem, then you've lost everything. So just don't do that. Other policies, tech devices in the classroom. You're free to use whatever you want in the classroom, provided it doesn't disrupt other students' learning, principally, or my ability to teach. You can use your tech devices. I mean, society includes tech devices. It'd be weird for me to say, leave your phone at the door for a writing and technology class. It doesn't make any sense. Part of learning is learning how to focus, right? Learning how to block out things that are extraneous or distracting from the task at hand. You're going to have to do that in your everyday life. You already have to do it now. So that's just part of the course as well, is learning how to pay appropriate attention to what's most salient. If you're interrupting other students' learning or my ability to teach, I will ask you to stop. I do have that right and ability, whatever. Availability of material online. Some of the stuff we do, the projects, they're going to be posted on the open internet. So just be aware of that. And some of the stuff you do will be accessible. Because of that, you don't want to use any personal identifying details. I'm not going to ask you to do that really anyway. So it's just sort of a careful practice for stuff that's going on the internet. You want to make sure that, how you're identifying yourself is reflective. Some things you do want to put your name on, you're proud of it. This is your actual work. Other stuff, maybe you don't want to use your full name or something like that. We'll talk about it in class. I mean, that's part of what we're going to learn. This production thing, all this means is some of the stuff we're going to be doing, it's going to require software and that kind of stuff beyond what's basically installed in campus computers, or what comes with a new laptop you buy. Most of this stuff is going to be open source software that I'm going to ask you to download, so it won't be an issue. Just be aware that you are going to need some special tools. Attendance and punctuality. I do take roll. You just have a sign-in sheet. We only meet face-to-face 15 times. That's it. Because of that, if you miss more than 3 in-class meetings, you fail. I mean, that's 3 weeks. So that's really generous. If there's any weird circumstances where, well, not even weird, just, you have another commitment or whatever, if you can let me know beforehand, it's probably fine. Just let me know beforehand and we can make accommodations. Otherwise, I mean, if you're missing this much class, it means you really need to retake it because you're missing a huge chunk of the course. I mean, that's what, 20%. So that's the gist of attendance and punctuality. Late work, generally, I don't accept it. I mean, this is a professional writing class, which means we abide by professional deadlines. There just aren't second chances. The good news is we go along by stages and we do drafting and revision. So you're never going to be surprised by anything. The calendar completely articulates everything we're doing. So there's no surprises. If your work is late, it's kind of your own doing. A few more. Academic integrity. This just means we abide by the honor code. The gist of that is, plagiarism and cheating. It tends not to be too much of an issue in this course because the things we do, we're in such close contact. It's, it wouldn't even be that easy to cheat. I'm not challenging you to do it. And I don't think you guys are cheaters. That's the thing. I mean, I don't want to go over this too much because I don't believe you're cheaters. Most students are not. Very few actually are. The punishment for cheating at this university also is super dire because you go up in front of the student conduct board, it's other students, and they'll throw the book at you. It happens once or twice a year, and students are not forgiving of other students who cheat because, it's cheating them. I mean, they have to work hard. Everyone has to work hard. Why should the cheaters get away with anything? The gist of that is it's not going to come up probably in this class. Plagiarism sometimes come up, but mostly it's unintentional. We can hammer that out. Don't cheat in any of your classes, but you're not going to anyway. So, disabilities. We make every accommodation, and because this is a tech class, that does come up. Just make sure you go through the Disability Resource Center. I can't do anything on my own. I'm legally precluded from making any accommodations on my own. You just have to go through the DRC. Violence and harassment, we have on the campus a zero tolerance policy, and we do have resources if you're ever subject to any kind of harassment. Occasionally that does happen. If it's immediate, you can actually just straight up call 911. Otherwise, we do have the CARE has a line and an office. One thing to be aware of about this is that all campus employees, and that includes me, we're legally obligated to communicate any report of alleged sexual misconduct on or off campus. So anything you tell me, even in confidence, I have to report. I mean, it's a legal obligation. There are only 3 centers on campus that are exempt from that, that have confidentiality. That's CARE, the Counseling Center, and the Abrams Student Health Center. You can give confidential information to those centers, and they can keep it confidential. Every other university employee, everybody, teachers, staff, librarians, people who are working in Hawk's Nest, everybody, we're legally obligated to report any alleged sexual misconduct. That's not to discourage you from talking to us. I'm always there if you need to talk to me about anything. It's just you should be aware that anything you tell me, I have to report to the Dean of Students. If you need a confidential source, that would be CARE, the Counseling Center, or the Student Health Center. Religious observance. This is actually a state law. You're guaranteed 2 excused absence for religious observations, legitimate religious observation. The thing of it is you have to let me and the registrar know in writing in the first week of class. Now, your religious holidays coming up, so you can do that. That's really just there so that people can't, during the semester say, oh, hey, I have this surprise religious holiday. You have to turn it in the first week of class or you don't get them. A couple of last things. As I mentioned, grades are dispersed online through this website, through an anonymous student ID. It's randomly determined. You can opt out of that policy by checking that box or initialing that box on the course contract. This gives the breakdown of the different assignments. This is everything we have, okay? We don't have a midterm or a final or anything like that. This is the gist of it. And we have a page on the course website that goes over these individually. We're going to look at in a second. Excuse me, but this gives you the percentage breakdown. So we've got engagement assignments, responses, 2 main projects, the local mapping project and the podcast project, and then a shorter reflective website project. You can see its grade weight is a little bit lower than the other 2 main projects. It's because it's a little bit different. It's shorter. It's near the end to kind of reflect and accumulate on what you gained in this course. Also, as it mentions here, we're going to go through all together different stages. We're going to walk through the stages of these projects. We're going to do drafting and revision cycles. You're going to get comments from me. You're going to get peer review. Nothing's really a surprise. It's all kind of workshopped. The takeaway there is final versions, I tend not to put a lot of comments on. You tend to just kind of get a grade because at that point, a lot of comments on final versions, it's basically just explaining why you got the grade that you did. And that's really not the point. The point for comments should be to help you advance, right? So at this point, it's really just kind of, beating you over the head or singing your praises. You don't really get a lot of comments in your final version, but you can always come talk to me at any stage, even after it's due, after you got your final grade, whatever. You can email me. That's always there. And then we do use the plus minus in this course. Just be aware of that. It's not I don't use that to hurt anybody. It's just that grades, as you know, as a student are very coarse. They just don't tell you very much about what happened in a course. It's just it's a letter. It's not even a number. It doesn't really say anything about what you did, what you know. It says something, but not very much. We use plus minus because that's a little bit more fine grained. There's a big difference between a B minus and a B plus, right? That's a very different student experience. So we do use that just to kind of parse that out, but I'm not looking to injure anybody with it. All right, that's the syllabus. As I said, you'll probably only see this, a few times. Do read through it just to make sure that you're comfortable with the policies. We are all going to be signing the course contract, so you want to know what's in it. And then you'll refer to the syllabus when you have questions about, policies or grading or this or that. Generally, it's in there, but you can always ask me. There are no stupid questions. Just if you have a question, just come ask me. That said, you do always want to kind of figure out how to answer your own questions just for your own sort of personal knowledge. How do you, navigate situations? Okay, anywho, the assignments. We looked at this, in the syllabus, this kind of breakdown of them. This page, and we're not going to pour over these, it breaks these down individually. So engagement assignments, these are small in-class and out-of-class assignments that we do to make the course move forward. We're going to have one of those right at the beginning just to kind of show you how those work. Responses, those are longer replies to specific prompts over things like course readings or videos or podcasts that I assign. There are some tips here about how to do successful responses. The first one, and this is something I mentioned, is make sure that you do your responses, do everything in a separate program and save it before you submit them. That way you have a copy because we're going to bring them up in class, so you need access. And if there are any computer problems, you've got a saved copy, so nothing gets lost. You want to post your responses by their deadlines. That's probably obvious, but just make sure you do it. Some responses, probably most of them, have length requirements. And, those are kind of subjective, but they do encourage the kind of sustained interaction that leads to a good response, right? So, I don't want anyone adding very, 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 very to try and hit a word count. I mean, if you're doing that, what it means is you're not engaged to the depth that you should be with this material. Make certain to account for the complete prompt. So if it asks you to, respond to something specific, do that. This isn't, here are my thoughts about this. I'm going to be asking you particular questions. So make sure you actually address them. Demonstrate your engagement by using concrete specifics. A lot of times I can very easily tell when students really haven't read or listened to the podcast because everything's very general, or it just talks about the first thing that it says, in the reading. I can tell that. I've been doing this for, well over a decade. Demonstrate that you've engaged the material, you've thought about it. You haven't just skimmed it while you were watching Netflix. You were actually reading and paying attention to it. And the way to do that is by pulling concrete specifics. When you speak generally, well, the reading, it talked about technology. I mean, I know that. I've read it. I want to know your specific thoughts about this. So point to specific material in there and then focus tightly on that. And then use grammar and structure appropriate for professional context. There's nothing objectively that can be called good grammar. There is edited American English, and that's generally what we're shooting for here. The kind of grammar mechanics that we want in professional environments. You don't always see it, but that's what we want. And then just really quickly, the sort of major projects, you can see they're broken down into summaries, resources, examples, and then deliverables are the things you're actually turning in, and then the grade weight for each one of those in the context of the project. We'll be looking at these more particularly in class. They're already on the website, so go ahead and take a look anytime you want. That's the gist of the assignments page. You'll be consulting this periodically throughout the semester. The calendar, this last one, you're going to be looking at this all the time. This is probably the most important page in terms of everything we're doing in the semester. You can see it's completely broken down. This is, every meeting till the end of the semester. And in the columns here, we've got the date. This first column is what's due. Because this is a hybrid, you can see it actually says due at 3:30 p.m. A lot of our meetings, well, half of them are online. So we still are going to have things that are technically due at the beginning of class, which means by 3:30 p.m. That said, most of our online meetings, they're not going to be all of us logging on and, having a synchronous chat. Folks ask about that. Most of our online meetings, it's just going to be you doing stuff by yourself or responding to things that students have posted. You're going to be kind of managing your own time. It's not like an online class meeting. Sometimes we do that, but not super often. But we still have stuff due by deadlines. So if you want to look really quickly, we can kind of see how that works. These rows indicate whether it's a online period or a in-class period. So light gray is Tuesdays, which are online, and then white is Thursdays, which is in class. So you can kind of see how that works. So first day, January 12th, that is a Tuesday. You're probably watching this video on that day. You can see the period agenda here. Watch course introduction video, and then you're going to be submitting the personal introductions post. That's what you should be doing. Okay. We can take a look at this here in a second, but that's kind of how it works. Everything's going to be linked. Right now, they're only links for the first few weeks because I just kind of do them as we go. For the 14th, that's our first in-class period. You can see we've got printed and signed course contract. That's due right at the beginning of class. It means just bring it in printed to class. And then you can see what we're going to be doing. Discussing writing and technology, getting our Google account, introducing the first project, and then starting the first element of that. Then for the 19th, which again is a Tuesday, this practice map analysis, that's going to be due at 3:30. This is going to be linked so you can just submit it online. But even though this is an online period, we do have stuff due at particular times. You're just going to have this in by then. Sometimes the due dates will be kind of explicated. You can see here for the 26th, this is actually due by midnight, right? It says complete response to by midnight. So the due dates will either be stipulated or they'll be here in this column due by 3:30. This may seem a little confusing right now. It totally is not. You know, you'll understand this completely within the first week. The gist of it is this is stuff that's due at the beginning of class, whether we're actually meeting in person or whether it's online. This is the period agenda, and some things will have stipulated due dates. That's the gist of how that works. I did want to just really quickly kind of show you, since, as I mentioned, things are going to be linked. You can just go through the calendar and everything you have to do is right there. For this first period, we can see we've got the personal introductions post linked. If I click on that, it takes me right to it. I am asking you to do this just so that we can all see what this is like. This is a Google form, and we're going to be doing quite a few of these. So this will give us a kind of low stakes exposure to it. Filling this out is an engagement assignment. So this shows you sort of what engagement assignments are, kind of these sort of necessary things we do to move the class along. This also will show me that everyone is able to submit this kind of form, since we're going to be using them. Now, as I said, for these forms, you don't want to just type directly into it, because what happens if I click submit and my computer crashes? I've lost everything. So you don't want to do that. What you want to do is compose in a separate program and then copy and paste it over. So name, well, I don't need to do that. Introduction, provide a few sentences about yourself, including your major year and personal interests. So, I type that here. And then once I've answered all these questions, expectations, fit, obviously you'll be writing real content and not just smashing the keyboard like I am. Just copy and paste those over. That way, if there's any problems, you haven't lost any work, and do save this so that we can talk about it in class. If you just submit this, it's gone. It goes to me, but you don't have a copy. That's why you need to save this stuff outside of there, so that you can pull it up in class and we can talk about it. One thing you noticed is if I don't fill out all the required things, which are marked with a little red star, it won't even let me submit. If you don't put your name, it won't let you submit, so don't worry about that. It's kind of foolproof. Jeremy. When you do submit it, this is what you'll get. Thanks, your response has been recorded. You can actually edit it if you made a mistake before you, or after you submitted, sorry. All right, so that's the gist of how those work. Back to our calendar. We're going to be walking through this stuff as we go. Hopefully there aren't going to be any big surprises, and you'll be able to pick up sort of how the course flows within the first week or two. All right, that's the gist of the website. I know this is kind of a long video, but we do have specific things we have to cover. We can see the main elements of the website. The home where there's going to be updates, the syllabus. Do read the syllabus. Do consult it when you have questions about the course. As you know from all your other college courses, a lot of times the answers are in the syllabus if you just go ahead and take a look. Anything that's unclear, though, never be afraid to ask me a question. I'm always happy to answer your questions. I'm a teacher. That's the gig. So if you've ever got questions, feel free to go ahead and ask. Assignments, this breaks down the assignments. We've got engagement assignments and responses, and then we've got 2 major projects and a little bit of a shorter project. The grade weight of those things is articulated here in the syllabus, and so that kind of shows you where the overall grade comes from. And if it's not there, we don't do it. There's no participation grade. The only thing with participation or attendance or whatever is if you miss a certain number, if you miss more than 3, you fail, so don't do that. But we don't have a participation grade. We don't have an exam or anything like that. This is it. That's the whole of the course. And then the calendar, that breaks down everything we're going to do. I'm going to add the links as we go. I'm going to make some tweaks, some changes. As it says up here, the calendar is always subject to a little bit of change. Any changes, though, I'll, of course, point out, and they'll probably end up as a post on the homepage as well. All right, that's it. Again, welcome to the course. I'm excited for this course because we get to talk about not only the practical elements of digital composition, which is exciting in and of itself, but also the rhetorical and theoretical underpinnings of those practices, right? This isn't just a rote skill. It's not just, hey, how do I use Photoshop or something like that? As I say, you could learn that on your own in a couple hours. Well, you get the basics of it. So a tool like Photoshop actually is a whole job. But what we get here is not only technical, procedural knowledge, but also how do I use this in different situations? How do I take apart a situation, a communicative situation, and then respond appropriately, right? That's what rhetoric is. Who am I talking to? What am I trying to do? What's the situation? And then how do I respond effectively? We also get to talk about different theoretical aspects of social contexts, of the differences between open source software and commercial software, and how those aren't just simply commercial things, different ideas about how to make money, but also different ideas about how knowledge and practice are articulated, specifically through tools. So this is an interesting class for me. It is a hybrid section, so there's a bit more of an onus on you to be personally invested in the class and to take responsibility for your own success. You're more independent in these kinds of classes. So, success and failure is up to you. And you are allowed to fail. You can do that if you want. If you opt out and fail, that can be a valuable experience too. You can always contact me with questions. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or come to office hours. That's always a nice surprise. I hope you find this course to be challenging and rewarding. Rewarding things are always challenging. I'm looking forward to the semester. I'll see you guys in class on the 14th, it looks like. If you need to talk to me before then, you can shoot me an email. All right, I will see you.